This is an urgent message to all music producers. The music industry is really robbing us blind and they're scamming us all. And I'm just trying to tell people and bring awareness to this situation so that we can kind of combat what's going on. So let me really break down to you, if you're a music producer, how you're being scammed, how you're being robbed, and how you're being defrauded for your royalties, your money, and all that type of stuff. For those who don't know who I am, I'm Juggernaut of Arkatech Beatz. I'm part of a multi-platinum producer production group, right? Shout out to my partner Mike Trauma D. I've produced for everybody from Big Pun to Nas to Prodigy of Mobb Deep, The Game, Jadakiss, Killer Mike, you name it, we've pretty much done it. The way that this game is going right now is they're robbing us blind, and the way that they're doing it is they're doing it from a standpoint that doesn't seem as if it's intentional. It comes across as clerical errors or administrative errors. And by the time you catch it, you've either you've expired the time that it would take for you to be able to audit, or if you're able to receive retroactive royalties, you've exceeded the time that you're supposed to get the retroactive royalties for the issues that are at hand. So let me break down to you some of the ways that these record labels, they rob the producers. And there are plenty other ways, but for the sake of not making this video 2 hours long, I'm just going to go through a couple of things. On the first way that they try to rob folks is, you say you get all your contracts are taken care of, you sign off. The first way that they do it is they slow walk you getting your executed copies. So you might get paid, but the artist never really signs off, or the artist doesn't sign off for maybe 1, maybe 2, maybe 3 years, right? Without the artist signing off on some of these agreements, it holds up the process of you being able to open up your vendor access. And people say, "What's your vendor access?" Every time that you do a deal with a label, you are basically now a vendor. You've done a contract with them because you're going to be owed royalties of some sort. So, because you're going to be owed producer royalties, master recording royalties, in order for those royalties to be collected, you got to take your contract. You got to basically furnish your contract to those folks. It'll have all of your information on it. You got to give them your EIN, which is your tax ID number, or your social security number, the name of your business, your contact information, banking information, etc. But they need your contract to be able to determine what you're supposed to be paid, because you're going to be paid as per the terms of your contract. So if you have a contract that has 3%, 5%, whatever your royalty rate might be, 8%, whatever it is as a producer, they'll need that contract to start to determine what it is that you're going to get paid. And what happens in this situation is that if they don't get executed copies, it slow walks your process, right? And then all of this stuff is going on in the back end. Records are selling, but remember, you only have a certain window of time as per your contract that you can audit the label. You see how the game works? So what the game is here to do is to slow walk everything, make everything slow. So by the time that you're able to finally get your vendor access and those sort of things, what they want to do is they want to try to get you outside of the window where you had the biggest amount of sales so that you can't audit them, right? Because when an artist comes out, the biggest amount of sales and play is at the beginning, and then it starts to diminish over time. So this is part of the game that they like to do and like to play with people. They like to make these type of hurdles and obstacles. Some of the other things that I've also seen in this situation is they intentionally can't find your agreements, right? Like, all of a sudden, if you're a producer and then you've had a record out for some time, and it's time for you now, the record is finally recouped and you're trying now to get your royalties, all of a sudden, your agreement is magically unattainable, or it's archived somewhere that you can't get access to it. So it's very important that you have all of your documents, making sure that you're being able to provide those so that you can get your vendor access taken care of. One of the other ways that these folks try to rob you is when you're registering your songs through maybe like something like the SoundExchange or something like that. And it goes back to the contract again, because it goes back to talking about letters of direction, And that's something that you will need to have signed off by the artist, that has to be submitted to the Sound Exchange so that they can determine what you're supposed to get paid on that record. But you can have a copy of it, but you can't submit it. You can't submit the schedule that shows all of the splits. You can't submit that to them. They won't accept it from you. They'll only accept it from either the label and the artist. So this creates another hurdle for you, and it's only retroactive, but for so long. So you can imagine the amount of agreements that you can have that will be signed off on, but the label folks will never seem to submit the letter of direction. You have to keep submitting request after request, and it goes into these email boxes, which are basically black holes. And everything, again, like I said, is designed to slow walk you from getting your money and getting into the system, so that you only have a certain amount of time to get royalties retroactively, or a certain amount of time to audit. This is the game that they play. So if everybody kind of slow walks their situation, and you get a whole bunch of producers who don't get, a little bit of money here, a little bit of money there, over time you have a whole bunch of money, billions of dollars in and what they would call billions of dollars in what they would call black box royalties that disappear out of nowhere. Right. And they'll say, oh, people just didn't collect their royalties. And that's really just not the case. It's not the case that people didn't collect their royalties. It's just the simple fact that they slow walk these processes, and then all of a sudden your stuff falls between the cracks. Some of the other ways that you might get yourself scammed, and pay attention to this one. You might be registering your songs. Your songs might be registered. You might be registering your songs to say ASCAP or so forth and so on. And then you can submit your work, you can register your work. But then if the major publisher submits the same work and they submit something different, they're going to accept the splits or the writer's credits that's coming from the publisher, the major publisher, and not coming from you, even if you submitted it first. Right? So this is how you can get left off of records. And by the time you realize that you're being left off of records, and that your writer's credits are not there, or maybe your publishing credits are not there, then you have to go back to the situation where now you have to provide the split sheet and or the contract in order to have that fixed. And then in some cases with ASCAP, they won't give you retroactive royalties that exceed more than a year. Right? So this is the games that these folks keep playing. These folks will change registrations. They'll leave you off as a writer, or they'll leave you off as a publisher. And they play these type of games, hoping that you don't catch it. And even if you have a publishing administrator, you still have to double check your work. You have to make sure that your work is not only submitted to ASCAP or any of your other performing rights societies, you have to also make sure that it's accepted, and that the royalties are being paid from the accepted work and not just the submitted work. Because sometimes you'll have duplicates, and they'll say a possible match, but it doesn't mean that you're going to get paid, because it hasn't been accepted as the registration, right? So this is just the games that are being played on different levels. And what I want to try to do is I want to try to really inform producers and let producers know that we're not taking it anymore in 2025. We're just not taking it anymore. If people are trying to steal your beats, if people are trying to not credit you on your music, trying not to pay you on your music, if they're trying to do all of this stuff that's trying to really circumvent the process or make the process harder for you to get paid, I need you guys to reach out to me. I'm going to put a link in the description, and I'm putting together, or I'm working with, I'm not even going to say I'm putting together, but I'm working with a group of guys who are really going to try to make sure that we're going to get what you're owed. Point blank, period. We're not playing any more games with this music industry and the way that they're trying to play producers. We're going to be not only educating producers, but we're going to be helping producers recover their money and recover their royalties, recover things that they're owed and paid, and making sure that everything is being set up correctly from the jump and being handled accurately from the jump, and making sure that people are on top of your situation. Because what you don't want to have is, you don't want to have these situations like what happened with Angie Stone, rest in peace, where she's thinking that people are handling her situation and they're not handling it, and all of a sudden these records are all put into they're not registered, and she could have retired and didn't retire. And then you have the other situation with like Iggy Azalea right now, where they're going after UMG, or Limp Bizkit, where they're going after UMG, where they're saying these royalties are hidden, and all types of nonsense. If I could honestly just tell you what we're going through for ourselves as established producers, your head would spin. And it's like the bigger the record, the more malfeasance that takes place, right? The more lies and the robbery that's taking place, the bogey, I would call them the fake royalty statements that just for some reason don't seem to change, or you know, an artist only gets X amount of streams for a whole quarter, where it's like this crazy, and it doesn't even make sense. You can go on YouTube and you can see more streams on a record than what they're reporting. So it's a game that's being played, and we have to make sure that we're being diligent in making sure that we're not being taken advantage of anymore. So if you're a producer, established producer, a producer that has credits, if you want to make sure that you watch through this whole video, because we're going to tell you what we need to do to make sure that you're not getting scammed anymore. So like I said, I'm going to leave a link in the description where producers can kind of give their information, where you can reach out to me, because I want to make sure that I'm going to put a bunch of folks together and making sure that we can take care of this type of stuff in 2025. We're not going to sit here and not going to continue to be robbed. We're not going to continue to let the industry just take advantage of us. So, like I said, there's a link in the description. Just fill out the form. It'll take about 2 minutes. It'll, ask you who you are, what records you did, what records you produced, how much streams it possibly did. And then based off of those type of things, we can determine, like, if you got a lot coming to you or a little bit or whatever, results will vary. But we're definitely trying to put together this team to help people get their money. So, I just wanted to let everybody know that you don't have to stand up for this stuff anymore. There are things that we're going to be able to do to make sure that we can combat this. Stay tuned with that. Thanks for listening. It's your main man, Juggernaut Arkatech Beatz. I'm signing out. Peace.